Hello and welcome back. I'm your host Claire, and today's topic is all about the third person in your relationship, and obviously that is in the context of a monogamous relationship. And I'm predominantly going to speak from the perspective of a heterosexual monogamous relationship, because that is my primary experience. Although I am bisexual, the current relationship I am in is with a cis male. And so that's the perspective I am talking from, but that doesn't mean that what I'm saying doesn't apply to other relationships as well. So just wanted to kind of put that disclaimer there, but take what resonates and leave the rest if that is not your situation. And I hope that you can still find some helpful little nuggets in this episode. So who is the third person in your relationship? It's your menstrual cycle. As people who have a menstrual cycle, it affects every aspect of our being, our physical being, our emotional being, spiritual, mental, all of it. And I know that society has kind of, conditioned us into thinking that that is a bad thing. You know, you see these adverts and the like feminist slogan of like, anything a man can do, I can do whilst bleeding. And it's like, okay, sure. But also like, maybe we don't have to, like maybe it's not a bad thing if we don't have to do that, like maybe it's not a bad thing if we can't do that. We don't have to make ourselves like men or people who don't bleed and don't have a womb to be valuable and to be powerful. So anyway, that's a bit of a side note, but I know that we have this kind of idea that our menstrual cycle really does impact us in every single way is a bad thing, but it really, really isn't. It's where the gift is. And as me and my partner have kind of gone on this journey of becoming a really cycle-aware couple, he has actually now got to the point, he's like, oh man, I kind of wish I had a menstrual cycle. Like, it sounds like a really powerful thing to have. And of course, we're all cyclical beings. You know, we're all of nature. We are all of the earth, and nature is cyclical inherently. But obviously in people who menstruate and people who have a cycle, that is just so much more prominent and evident. So the third person in your relationship is your menstrual cycle, and I really want to preface this. This is not a bad thing. This is not a bad thing. This is a really beautiful thing, or can be a really beautiful thing, when you as an individual can move with your menstrual cycle, but also you as a couple. So yeah, this episode is really going to be about the importance and the power, actually, of becoming a really cycle-aware couple, and bringing your partner in on the experience of your menstrual cycle, and how that can not only really impact your experience of your menstrual cycle and facilitate your healing, to have someone who is essentially a mirror, right? Like, that's what our relationships are. They're a mirror of ourselves and our deepest wounds and all of this, and relationships, I really feel... relationships have certainly been one of my biggest teachers and healers, and challenges as well. So yeah, having that there, but also thinking about how actually this can really deepen the intimacy between you and your partner and really fortify your relationship. But first, I guess it's probably important to talk about, like, how do we actually start addressing this? Because even in school, we aren't taught about the menstrual cycle. As people who menstruate, as women, we aren't taught and educated on our menstrual cycle. So of course, men and people who don't have menstrual cycles aren't fucking educated on it. Of course they're not. So how do we go about this? And there's so much like shame and and just societal conditioning around this. So it can feel like a really sensitive topic, and one that might be difficult to bring up, one that might be difficult to have conversations about. But I really want to stress the importance of, if we want to live in a world where our menstrual cycle and our, cyclical bodies are not demonized, are not pathologized, are not, actually not even just not pathologized, but actually revered, and like the importance of our body. We see that as sovereign. We see our bodies as sovereign, and we are sovereign beings and really respected. If we want to see that in society and for the future generations, that has to start with us. It starts on the individual level. It starts with talking to the people closest to you, one being your partner, about your menstrual cycle and bringing that to the table. Because if we can't do that, then of course nothing's going to change in society. Of course it's not. And I think the other element of this is really not, I really want to encourage people to not kind of demonize men for not understanding, because it's really not their fault that they don't understand. It is their responsibility to learn. It is their responsibility to, like it is all of our responsibilities to undo the programming and our wounding and, operate from a different place. Of course, that is all our individual's responsibility, but we have to understand this bigger picture that they just don't know. They haven't been educated. Just like, probably, you might relate that, I certainly didn't really have any idea of my menstrual cycle apart from the fact that I bled once a month and I ovulated once a month. That was kind of it. So, of course they don't. And I know that for a lot of couples, this can be really hard. I was really lucky that my partner, Jake, he was really very, very curious and open, and he's before our relationship, he went out with people who had PCOS and PMDD and all of that. So he was already pretty open and willing to talk about it. But I know that isn't everybody's situation. And I just want to plant a seed, and this might be slightly radical. I don't think it should be radical. And if this activates you, I really encourage you to sit with it if you can. But if the person you are sleeping with, your beloved, is not willing to talk to you about all of your bodily functions, not willing to talk to you about your menstrual cycle, is not willing to get to know your body intimately in that way, should they really have access to you in an intimate way? Should they really have access to your body in that intimate way? Should they really be having sex with you? Right? I just want to put that out there because it's part of you. It is part of your beauty and your power. And I don't know, that's just kind of been my rule for a while, is look, and I say this to clients, I say this to friends, look, if they are not interested in learning about your menstrual cycle, that is a big red flag. That is, if they're not even, I'm not saying if they have the ick about it or if they find it difficult. No, I'm not. I'm saying if they're not even willing to listen and try and go on this journey, why are you having sex with them? If they want access to that, then that's part of it. It's part of our reproductive health. So I just think that's so important to kind of put out there, that little, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a mindset shift or raising of standards, because ultimately if we want men to do better, we have to raise our own standards. That starts with us. So aside from that, maybe it's worth thinking about how you bring this topic up. So I find, honestly, the more vulnerable you can be about it, the better. If this is something that you've never talked about with your partner, actually, being really vulnerable about it and saying, hey, I'm actually a little bit nervous to talk to you about this, but it's really important to me, and I'm going on this journey and I'm trying to look at my own menstrual cycle, and I would really love to have your support. Being really vulnerable about it is always the way to go, in my opinion. The more vulnerability you can bring to it, the more of a vulnerable and connecting and intimate conversation you're going to have. So that is my kind of, I guess, advice on how to approach the conversations. But I want to talk a little bit about the things that can really start to happen when you start to move as a cycle-aware couple. So the first thing is you feel like more of a team. You feel like more of a team because you start to adjust your social calendar, the household chores, who takes the kids. I don't have kids, but I know from friends who do have kids that do this work, you just feel more like a team on everything, because actually your needs are being accounted for. Your needs are being accounted for in that, when you're on your bleed, you really don't have the capacity to do it all. Not that you should be doing it all anyway, at any point, but you get what I'm saying. You can start to really feel that strong bond of oh, okay, actually I am allowed to exist as I am, in this partnership, and we are a team on that. And when one of us is, we care about each other's emotional states and our well-being and where we're at. So that's one thing that can happen. The second really beautiful thing, if you're a cycle-aware couple, is that you can start to get some really powerful reflections back from your partner. So I did an episode recently about transition days and how there might be days where you kind of feel funky, even in a good part of your cycle, and that can be a transition day. So for me, these kind of show up as like real like nothingness days, and I feel like I'm a little bit in the void and just like, blah. And Jake, my partner, has been really instrumental in helping me notice those days, because he's like, oh, aren't you on like day 13 right now? Oh, aren't you just like coming out of, surely you should be like coming out of your summer and into your autumn right now. Is it a transition day? And then that prompts me, and I'm like, oh shit, yeah, it is. Thank you so much for reflecting that back to me, because sometimes other people, and this is the power of having a coach or a mentor as well, is that other people can reflect back to you sometimes what we can't see. So that is like a little thing that can potentially happen. And this is not me saying that it's up to your partner to reflect back to you, your emotional states. Absolutely not. That is on you. But it can form a real intimacy where there's this like noticing that, they start to notice your patterns, and that being reflected back to you can be really powerful for your own healing and your own self-development work and all of that kind of thing. It can also really add context to, if you have arguments or disagreements, or you're feeling slightly disconnected. So for example, right before your period, you're probably going to be feeling disconnected, because that's exactly how you should be feeling. You should be feeling like you want to separate from the world, or maybe you don't. I'm going to do another episode on that, about why that can be challenging to separate, because a whole attachment issues can weave into that. But it can really add context to that, and it can really stop you going like, oh God, like, why don't I feel this way? Why don't I feel super loving? Why don't I feel da-da-da? Or it can stop them going like, oh, why are they like this? Da-da-da. It just opens this conversation. And it is still so important, even when you're a cycle-aware couple. You still have to communicate about it. You can't just like read each other's minds. But it's really powerful, and it can add a lot of context to how you're feeling and your dynamic, I guess. So yeah, that's another really beautiful way that it can kind of help deepen the intimacy in your relationship and your understanding of each other. So how do you go about becoming a cycle-aware couple? I think it really is about these conversations, like we talked about at the start, having these conversations about your menstrual cycle, taking your partner along the journey with you. That is exactly what I did when I came off the contraceptive pill after 12 years. And I was like, hey, look, like even that decision to come off the pill, I was like, hey, I really want to do this, but I really struggle with PMDD and my premenstrual mood swings and stuff, and I'm a little bit nervous, but I really want to go down this journey, and I would really love your support. And of course he was there, and super supportive in all of that. And it has been, it was my individual journey, and continues to be my individual journey, but ultimately being in a relationship means that you're journeying side by side each other. And so I think bringing them into your menstrual cycle awareness journey is really, really powerful and really beautiful. And I think it undoes a lot of patriarchal conditioning, not just within us around asking for our needs to be met and voicing what is going on, but also within them as well, like, around decommodifying women's bodies and actually seeing them as something to understand and to be valued, and also giving them permission to rest, because it isn't, just us that we're not the only ones that struggle to rest, like just because we have a period. Like, I think we're encouraged to do it more. We have a very clear marker, but everyone struggles with this. We live in a very toxic productivity society, and and it can bring them more in touch with their feelings, and it's just it really has this whole dynamic and impact on your relationship that can really foster a deeper intimacy and connection and more compassion for each other, and more of a give and take, more of an equal relationship and that kind of thing. So yeah, it can really, really catalyze your relationship into taking it to the next level, I guess, because this isn't obviously just for people who feel super unsupported or whatever. Absolutely not. Like it really deepens that, which I think is something that's really, really beautiful. And I think as well is important to model for our children. You know, I know when I do have kids, I want if I have a son, I want them to see their dad like taking care of the family and taking care of mum when she's on her bleed, and, you know, it being a really equal partnership. And I want him to not feel like weirded out by women's reproductive health. I want that to be like a normal fact of life. And I think that undoes so much patriarchal conditioning. And same if I have a daughter, you know, wanting her to not hold that period shame. And I really think that starts by us leading by example. And like I say, this work has really like big ripple effects into society, because when we start at home, if everybody is doing this work at home to sort of decommodify and remove the shame and heal the shame around women's bodies and our cycles, that just ripples out into this massive, massive effect of undoing all of this patriarchal wounding that as a society we are struggling so much with, connecting us back to our kind of natural state, our connection with nature, our connection with being cyclical beings and all of that. So yeah, it's really powerful work. I would love to hear, if you are a cycle-aware couple, what kind of benefits have you seen with, you know, bringing your partner in on your cycle awareness journey, letting them know where you are in your cycle, that kind of thing. What benefits have you seen? If I haven't mentioned any, I would love to hear them either in the comments or you can reach out by email. And if you're not currently, what are some of the challenges? You know, what are some of the blocks? What would you need to be able to feel like you could have those conversations? What are the barriers to that for you? I would love to know. Maybe I could do a little podcast episode on kind of like how to maybe navigate some of those. So that is it for today. Thank you again so much for your time and your attention. I am deeply, deeply grateful for it. And I will see you in the next episode.